It was one of those afternoons that felt like the sun had forgotten to take a break. The kind of heat that made the road shimmer and the air feel thick like it didn't want to move. Even the trees looked tired, their leaves drooping down instead of dancing in the breeze. But there was no breeze, just stillness and heat. A little girl sat on the front steps of a small house, her knees pulled up to her chest, a glass of lemonade sweating in her hand. Her hair was tied back and her cheeks were a little pink from the heat, but she didn't seem to mind. She was used to these summer days. Her mother was inside, lying down after lunch. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that fills a home when the world outside feels too hot to talk. She watched the street the way kids do when they're bored, but still hoping something might happen. A bird flew by lazily. A dog barked once, then gave up. The world seemed to be on pause. Then she saw someone. Far down the street, a man was walking slowly, his shoulders slightly hunched, like the heat was pressing down on him. He wore dark pants and a light shirt that clung to his back with sweat. He wasn't carrying anything, just walking one step at a time, like each foot was getting heavier. She could see from far away that he looked tired. Not just tired like after a long walk, tired in a deeper way, like he hadn't had a break in a long time. As he came closer, she noticed something else. He didn't look angry or upset, just worn out. His face had soft lines, not the kind made from frowning, but from time. His eyes looked at the ground mostly, but now and then, they lifted as if looking for something. Maybe a house, maybe a face, maybe just a little shade. He finally reached her gate and stopped. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, one hand resting on the gate, the other wiping sweat from his forehead with a small towel. His breathing was slow but heavy. The girl didn't know who he was. She had never seen him before. But something in her chest felt strange, a mix of curiosity and concern. The glass of lemonade in her hand was now half empty. She looked at it, then looked at him again. She stood up quietly and went inside. The hallway was cool and dark compared to the bright heat outside. She tiptoed into the kitchen, not wanting to wake her mother. She opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. Then she paused, opened the freezer, and dropped in a few ice cubes. The clinking sound felt loud in the quiet house. Without saying a word, she walked back outside. The man was still there, resting one foot on the sidewalk, the other barely lifting. He looked up as she approached. She held the bottle out to him with both hands. "Here," she said softly. He looked at her, surprised. His eyes searched her face as if checking to see if she really meant it. "It's cold," she added, trying to smile. He took the bottle slowly, nodding his head once. "Thank you," he said, his voice a little rough, like it hadn't been used much that day. He unscrewed the cap and drank. Not in a rush, but steadily, like his whole body needed it. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked at her again. This time his eyes were softer. "What's your name?" he asked. She told him. He nodded, repeated it once like he wanted to remember, then said, "That's a kind name. You have a kind heart." She didn't know what to say, so she just smiled again and sat back down on the steps. The man didn't sit, but he did lean against the tree just outside the fence. For a minute, they both sat in silence, a quiet that didn't feel empty but full. "I used to live around here," the man said suddenly, more to the tree than to her. "Long time ago." She looked at him, waiting. "Back then, the roads weren't paved. We played with sticks and stones. No one had a car. People knew each other." He smiled to himself, lost in a memory. "But time moves, doesn't it?" She nodded, not sure what else to say. He looked at her one more time and said, "You didn't have to give me this, but you did. I won't forget that." Then he stood up straighter, capped the bottle again, and gave her a small wave. "Take care of that heart, all right?" She nodded. "Okay." He turned and walked down the street, a little steadier now, though still slow. She watched until he turned the corner and was gone. The sun was still high. The heat hadn't gone anywhere. But the day felt a little different now. She didn't know why, but something inside her felt warm, not from the sun, but from the way the man had looked at her. Like she mattered. A few minutes later, her mother came out, stretching and blinking in the light. "What have you been up to?" she asked. "Just sitting," the girl replied. Her mother sat beside her, not asking more. Inside the house, the fridge hummed quietly. The street was still mostly empty. But in the girl's mind, she kept replaying the moment, the man's face, the way he drank the water, and the words he had said. She didn't tell her mom about it. Not that day. To her, it had just felt like the right thing to do. A person needed help and she had something to give. That was all. But far down the road, where the man had turned the corner, something else was happening. He had stopped walking. He stood still, holding the bottle, looking back the way he had come. Then he looked around, at the houses, at the trees, at the quiet neighborhood. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something down, and then he kept walking. The girl didn't know it then, but that one small moment, that simple, human act, had just started something much bigger than she could imagine. Something that would not only return to her, but would touch the lives of everyone around her. But for now, all she knew was that she had given someone water, and that felt like enough. The next few days passed like they always did in summer. Long, warm mornings that stretched into slow, sleepy afternoons. The little girl spent most of her time on the porch or under the tree in the front yard, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching the clouds drift by. Nothing unusual seemed to happen, and she didn't really think much about the man she had given water to. It had felt important in the moment, but life moved on quickly when you were 10. Her mother didn't mention anything about the man either. She hadn't seen him, and the girl hadn't brought it up, not because she was hiding it, but because it just felt like a small, quiet thing, something between her and the stranger, like a little secret the world didn't need to know. But the world, as it turns out, had other plans. On the third morning after that hot afternoon, something small but strange happened. The girl noticed a car she didn't recognize drive slowly down the street. It was black, shiny, and clean, the kind of car you didn't usually see in their neighborhood. People around here drove old trucks, used vans, and small cars with cracked windows. This one looked like it belonged in a movie. The driver didn't stop. Just rolled down the block, turned at the corner, and disappeared. At first, she thought nothing of it. Maybe someone had visitors. Maybe someone got lucky and bought a new car. But the next day, another black car passed by. A different one, new, quiet, smooth on the road. It didn't stop either. Just cruised by slowly, almost like the driver was looking for something or someone. She told her mom about it that evening while helping wash dishes. "There was a car," she said, drying a plate. "A fancy one. I saw it twice now." Her mom looked up from the sink. "What kind of car?" "Black, really shiny, and quiet." Her mother shrugged. "Maybe someone's got family visiting, or maybe they're lost." That seemed possible, so the girl didn't think much more about it. But by the end of the week, it wasn't just 1 or 2 cars. It was 4, then 5. Always dark-colored, always clean, and always slow. Some came in the morning. Some came late in the afternoon. And sometimes she caught the drivers looking out their windows at the houses, like they were counting something or trying to remember. Her neighbors started to notice too. One man across the street sat on his porch with his arms crossed, watching every car like a guard. A group of kids whispered about it while riding their bikes. An older lady who walked her dog every morning shook her head and muttered, "Too many eyes for my taste." It wasn't fear exactly, more like curiosity mixed with a bit of worry. The neighborhood wasn't used to attention. It was the kind of place where things stayed the same for a long time, quiet, simple, overlooked. So, when new eyes started showing up even silently, people noticed. One afternoon, the girl was sitting on the porch again, sipping juice through a straw when another car rolled past. This one was even bigger, the kind with tinted windows and silver rims. It didn't stop, but it did something different. It slowed down when it reached her house. Not just a little. The car almost came to a full stop right in front of her gate. She felt her heart beat a little faster. She leaned forward, trying to see through the dark window, but it was no use. The glass was too dark. Then, as quickly as it had slowed, the car moved on and turned at the end of the block. She didn't say anything. Not to her mother. Not to anyone. But the feeling stayed with her. Like something had changed. The next day was quiet. No strange cars, no slow drives, just heat and silence. But the quiet didn't last long. The following morning, a white van pulled up near the small community park a few blocks down. A couple of men in uniform stepped out, opened the back doors, and began unloading gardening tools, paint cans, and other supplies. A few neighbors came by to ask what was going on, but the workers just smiled and said they were told to clean up the park. No names, no company signs, Just quiet workers doing quiet work. The park hadn't been touched in years. Rusted swings, faded benches. The fountain hadn't worked in who knows how long. But now suddenly people were working on it like someone had decided it mattered again. Then came the fresh paint on the benches, the trimmed trees, new plants in the flower beds. Even the old broken water fountain got replaced. All in just 2 days. The girl watched it all from a distance, feeling like something was unfolding even if she didn't know what it was yet. That same week, flyers showed up on every door. Simple white pages taped or slipped through the mail slots. No logo, just a note. We see this neighborhood. We see its people. More is coming. That was all it said. No one signed it. No phone number. Just those few words. People started talking. In grocery lines, on sidewalks. Even the quietest neighbors were now curious. One man said it was probably a developer, looking to buy up houses cheap. Another thought it was the city trying to fix old problems. A few believed it was some kind of test, to see how the neighborhood reacted. But no one really knew. The girl listened to it all but didn't say much. Deep down, she kept thinking about the man who had stood at her gate, sweating and quiet just a few days earlier. He hadn't said much, but his words stayed in her mind. You didn't have to give me this, but you did. I won't forget that. Could it be? No, she thought. It couldn't be him. Just a tired man on a hot day. That's all it was. But doubt stayed with her. The next day, her mom brought it up again. Something's going on, she said while folding clothes. All these changes. It's too much, too fast. The girl stayed quiet. You know, her mom said slowly. It reminds me of one of those stories you see on the news, where someone does something small and it sets off something big. The girl looked up. Like what? Her mother smiled. Like a kid who gives her lunch to someone hungry. And later it turns out that person owns a bakery and sends food to the whole school. She laughed a little. Not exactly that, but you get the idea. The girl smiled too, but she didn't laugh. Her mom's words felt a little too close to something she wasn't sure she should say out loud. That evening, the girl sat on her porch again. The sky was orange now, and a soft breeze finally moved through the trees. She held the empty water bottle from that day. She had kept it, though she didn't know why. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the man's tired eyes, the way he had said her name, the quiet way he had thanked her. What if it really had been him? What if her simple act, a bottle of cold water, had started all this? She didn't know yet, but something told her that the quiet was almost over, that something was coming, not just cars, not just workers, but something bigger. And maybe, just maybe, it had everything to do with what she had done. The neighborhood had always been a quiet place, the kind where not much changed from one year to the next. People knew each other by face, if not by name. Children played in the same yards their parents once did. Most homes were a little worn, some in need of paint, others with broken fences or crooked mailboxes, but no one minded much. Life was simple, and that was fine by most. But now things were shifting. People felt it in the air, though they couldn't explain what it was. Something different was happening. Something that made folks step out onto their porches more often. Something that made them look twice when a new car passed by or a stranger stopped at the corner and stared at the old trees. The little girl still didn't say much. But she noticed everything. She watched how her neighbors were acting, and not scared. Not angry, but alert, curious, and maybe, somewhere underneath, a little hopeful. Early one morning, before the sun had even fully risen, another van rolled into the neighborhood. It wasn't like the others. This one had no tools or paint cans. It had people. 3 men and 1 woman stepped out, all dressed neatly, holding clipboards and phones. They weren't here to fix swings or clean up parks. They were here to look. They walked slowly, pausing in front of houses, jotting down notes, taking quiet photos, nodding to themselves. Once or twice they talked softly among themselves. No one stopped them, but everyone noticed. Curtains moved. Gates creaked open just a little. A few people stepped out and watched from their porches. One of the women waved politely to an old man sitting on a bench. He nodded back but didn't smile. No one knew what to make of it yet. That afternoon, the little girl sat with her mother on the porch. The heat was back, though not as sharp as before. Her mother had a newspaper in her lap but wasn't reading it. She seemed lost in thought. You remember last summer? She asked suddenly. The girl looked up. Which part? When the water pipe broke and no one came to fix it for a week, the girl nodded. We had to fill buckets from the neighbor's house. Her mother sighed. No one cared then. No city trucks. No visitors. Just us waiting. There was a long pause. Then her mother said, now all of a sudden they care. Just like that, the girl didn't answer. She was still thinking about the man from before. It had only been a moment, but somehow it felt tied to everything that was happening now. She kept going over his words in her head. You didn't have to, but you did. She didn't know how, but something deep inside her said this wasn't all just a coincidence. The next day, even more visitors came. They weren't loud. They didn't knock on doors or hand out flyers. But they were there. Some walked the streets slowly, like they were trying to feel the place. Others sat in parked cars looking at maps or checking their phones. Then something strange happened. One of the cars stopped right in front of the girl's house again. A man got out. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a plain shirt and dark pants. He looked around, then walked up to the gate. He didn't open it. He just stood there quietly for a moment. The girl, sitting on the steps, looked at him closely. He wasn't the same man from before, the tired one she'd given water to, but there was something similar in the way he stood. Calm. Thoughtful. He noticed her and gave a small smile. Nice afternoon, he said gently. She nodded. It's hot again, he chuckled. That it is. They stood in silence for a few seconds. I've heard this is a special place, he said. The girl tilted her head. Why? He smiled wider but didn't answer. Thanks for your time, he said, and turned back toward his car. She watched him go. Her heart felt like it was trying to connect dots, but the picture wasn't clear yet. That night the street was unusually bright. Cars passed by slowly, headlights cutting through the dark like they were looking for something. One of the neighbors finally said out loud what everyone else had been thinking. I don't care what anyone says. Something big is happening. By the weekend, it wasn't just workers and strangers anymore. The changes were showing up in real ways. A delivery truck dropped off stacks of bricks and lumber near the park. 2 trees along the sidewalk were marked with ribbons. A new bench appeared near the bus stop, not wooden, but metal, smooth and new. And someone had painted fresh lines in the small parking lot near the community center. Everywhere you looked, little pieces of new life were being planted. The neighbors met one evening under the biggest tree near the corner. Not officially, there was no announcement, but word spread fast and soon half the block had gathered. People brought folding chairs, water bottles, and curious questions. Does anyone know what's going on? Is the city behind this? Are they planning to buy out our homes? A woman who lived 3 houses down stood up. I heard someone say it's because of a girl. Everyone turned to look at her. She nodded. A little girl gave water to someone important. A visitor. And he remembered. People murmured, unsure. The girl sat quietly beside her mother, eyes wide. Are you sure? Someone asked. I don't know everything, the woman said, but that's what I heard. That a small act started all this. The group fell into a hush. If it was true, no one knew what to say. One man finally spoke. Well, whoever she is, she did something right. Heads nodded slowly. No one pointed to the girl. No one asked her directly. But deep inside, her chest felt warm again. That same feeling from the day on the porch. Later that night, when the street had quieted down and most of the neighbors had gone back to their homes, the girl sat on her porch alone. The stars were out. The air was cooler now. The sound of a cricket filled the stillness. She looked up at the sky and whispered, Was that really me? She didn't know for sure, not yet. But something inside her said yes. That small moment, a bottle of cold water, a kind smile, no questions asked, and it had mattered, and somehow, the whole neighborhood had felt the ripple. What had started as a quiet act of kindness on a hot afternoon was now growing into something much bigger than she could understand. People were waking up, looking closer, talking more. The neighborhood wasn't just a place anymore. It was becoming a story. And it wasn't finished yet. The morning started quietly, like most mornings in the neighborhood. Birds chirped softly, and the sun peeked over the rooftops, casting long golden lines across the street. It was the kind of calm that made people feel like things were getting back to normal. But by midday, that calm began to change. 3 cars came down the block, one after the other. All black, all clean, all slow. But this time they didn't just drive by. They stopped. One parked in front of the house with the cracked front steps. Another stopped at the small park. The third pulled up near the little girl's gate. The engines turned off. The doors opened. People stepped out, not many, just a few. Some were in plain clothes, others wore matching shirts with no logos, no names. One of them, an older man in a light jacket, had a quiet confidence about him. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. He stood in the middle of the street for a moment, looking slowly from one end of the block to the other. Then he walked toward the park. By now, people were peeking from behind windows and curtains. A few had stepped outside, pretending to water plants or check the mailbox. Everyone felt the same thing. Something was about to happen. The girl sat on her porch again, just like she had that first day. Her heart beat a little faster. Something told her that this moment mattered. A voice called out from the middle of the block. "We're inviting everyone to the park," it said. "We have something to share. Please come." It was a man's voice, and steady, kind, and sure. People looked at one another. Then slowly they began to move. Doors opened. Gates clicked. Neighbors who barely spoke during the week now walked side by side, crossing the street together. The girl stood up and followed her mother, her small hand held tightly. The park looked different now. Clean, fresh, full of green. New benches lined the walkway. A small stage built from simple wooden panels stood near the edge with a microphone on a stand. 2 speakers were placed nearby, connected to a portable sound system. No one had seen the stage being built. It must have been done early or in secret. The man in the light jacket stepped onto the platform. He didn't rush. He looked at the people in front of him, eyes full of calm. The girl noticed that he wasn't young, but he wasn't tired either. He stood tall as if the sun had no weight on his shoulders. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but clear. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know you have questions. I'm here to answer some." He paused, letting the silence settle. "My name doesn't matter right now," he said. "What matters is this place. And what it gave me." People leaned in. "A few days ago," he continued, "I came here quietly. I didn't tell anyone who I was. I didn't wear nice clothes. I didn't drive a fancy car. I just walked." He looked around. "I wanted to see if the heart of this place was still beating. I wanted to know if kindness still lived on these streets, the way it did when I was young and played under these same trees." Now there were murmurs. Some people looked at each other in surprise. "This neighborhood raised me," he said. "Long ago, I lived right down that street." He pointed to a narrow lane with old wooden fences. "We didn't have much, but we had each other. And people cared. Even if they didn't have much to give, they still gave. That's what I remembered. That's what I came looking for." He paused again. "And I found it." The girl's breath caught. "I found it," he said again, "in the form of a child, a little girl sitting on her porch who saw a stranger walking by. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't look the other way. She brought me water, cold with ice. And she smiled." Now everyone was looking around. The girl's face turned red. Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "She didn't know I used to live here. She didn't know I had spent the last 20 years building a company, or that I had returned to see if this place still had its soul." He stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "She just knew I looked thirsty." A soft laugh spread through the crowd, not because it was funny, but because it was real. That moment reminded me of who I was, where I came from, and what matters. He looked directly at the girl now. "I told her I wouldn't forget, and I didn't." Tears filled her eyes, though she didn't let them fall. "Today," he said, turning back to the crowd, "I'm here not just to remember, but to give back." People leaned in. He raised his hand and pointed to the team behind him. "These people aren't strangers. They're builders, planners, workers, and friends. And we're starting something here. Something real." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "This community will be renewed, not sold off, not broken apart, but rebuilt step by step with you. Parks, roads, homes, a new community center, after-school programs, support for small shops, and scholarships for children, starting with one very kind little girl." Gasps filled the air. Hands clapped over mouths. The girl looked up at her mother in disbelief. "Because one small act of kindness," he said, "can open the door to something much greater." Applause started slowly, then grew. People stood taller. Smiles spread across faces. Tears came, quiet and grateful. The man stepped down from the stage. He walked through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting hugs. And when he reached the girl, he knelt slightly. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, too shy to speak. He handed her something small, a silver key on a ribbon. "It's not to a car," he said with a smile. "It's to something you'll see soon." She took it with trembling fingers. Then he stood, nodded at her mother, and moved on. For the rest of the day, the park buzzed with life. Food was shared. Stories were told. Strangers became neighbors again. The girl held her key tightly, not knowing what it opened, but knowing it meant something good. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt light, not just from the sun, but from hope. The weeks after the gathering were filled with change. It wasn't sudden or loud, but steady, like the slow rise of the sun after a long night. The neighborhood, once quiet and worn, began to sparkle in small, surprising ways. The girl watched it all closely. Every morning she stepped outside and noticed new things. Fresh paint on old fences, flowers blooming where no one had planted before, children laughing on swings that didn't creak. She carried the silver key in her pocket like a secret promise. One afternoon, the man from the park appeared again. This time he wasn't alone. He brought with him a group of people, builders, teachers, artists, and friends. Together they worked with the neighbors, rolling up their sleeves and talking with smiles. "Let's fix the sidewalks first," one builder said. "Safety is important, especially for kids." A teacher came with books and ideas for after-school programs. The artists painted murals on blank walls, filling the streets with colors and stories. And the friends brought food, laughter, and music to the empty corners of the neighborhood. It felt like the place was waking up from a long sleep. The girl's mother helped organize the small community meetings. She smiled more often now, and people stopped by to chat, to ask questions, or just to say hello. Old fences were repaired and broken windows replaced. But more than that, friendships grew. People who had barely spoken before were now sharing meals and stories. One evening, the girl sat on the porch, holding the silver key in her hand. The sky was a soft purple, and the first stars were beginning to show. She wondered what the key would open. Her mother sat beside her, watching the quiet street. "You've done something special," she said softly. The girl looked up. "I just gave him water." Her mother shook her head with a smile. "Sometimes the smallest things mean the most." A few days later, the man came back. This time, he brought the girl and her mother to a building at the edge of the neighborhood. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was clean and bright inside. "This is for you," he said, handing the silver key to the girl again. "And for everyone here." The girl looked around. It was a small community center. Inside, there were bookshelves, tables, and colorful chairs. Posters on the walls showed children reading, playing, and learning. The man explained, "We built this for the neighborhood, a place to come together, to grow, to help each other. A place where kindness leads to hope." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She understood then that her small act, the water on a hot day, had helped open the door for something much bigger. The neighborhood was changing. Not just with new buildings or fresh paint, but in the way people cared for one another. The kindness she showed had inspired a wave of good that touched every house and heart. Months passed, and the community center became a busy, joyful place. Children learned to read and draw. Adults shared stories and ideas. Friends met over coffee and music. The streets were filled with laughter and light. One afternoon, as the girl helped plant flowers outside the center, the man returned once more. He smiled and said, "You showed the world that kindness matters. You reminded us all what home really means." She smiled back, feeling proud and hopeful. The neighborhood was no longer just a quiet place with cracked sidewalks. It was a shining example of what can happen when one small act touches many hearts. And it all started with a simple glass of water, given without question or expectation. After the community center opened, life in the neighborhood blossomed even more. The center became the heart of the block. It wasn't just a building anymore. It was a place filled with voices, laughter, and hope. The girl loved to spend time there. Sometimes she helped organize games for younger kids. Other times she sat quietly in the corner, reading a book or drawing pictures. She liked the way the walls were covered with colorful art and photos of the neighborhood's history. It made her feel connected, like she was part of something bigger. Her mother found new friends and a sense of purpose, helping with the programs and events. Neighbors who rarely spoke before were now sharing meals and stories. The air was filled with a feeling no one had felt in years, belonging. But with all this good, there were still challenges. Some people were unsure about the changes. They worried about what the future might hold. Would the neighborhood stay the same? Would old families be pushed out? Would the new growth feel real or just like a passing fancy? One afternoon, the girl noticed a small group gathered near the park. They weren't part of the volunteers or builders. They looked uncertain, even a little scared. Curious, she approached quietly. A woman older than most spoke softly. "We don't want to lose what we have," she said. "We're afraid the neighborhood will change too much." The girl listened. She understood the fear. Change can be hard even when it's good. Sometimes it feels like losing something precious. The girl walked home and told her mother what she heard. Her mother nodded slowly. "We need to listen to everyone," she said. "No one should feel left behind." That evening, a neighborhood meeting was held at the community center. People gathered in chairs arranged in a circle. The air was filled with honest questions and quiet hopes. The girl sat with her mother, watching the faces around her. One by one, neighbors spoke. Some shared stories of the past. Others spoke of dreams for the future. They talked about parks and schools, jobs and safety. Some feared they would lose their homes. Others worried their voices wouldn't be heard. The man from before, the one who had started it all, listened carefully. When it was his turn to speak, he spoke softly but clearly. "This is your home," he said. "Not mine, not anyone else's. We are here to help protect it, to build it with you, not for you." He talked about plans for affordable housing, support for local businesses, and programs that would help everyone. He promised that no one would be pushed out or forgotten. People nodded. The fear slowly turned to cautious hope. The girl felt proud. She understood that kindness wasn't just about one moment. It was about listening, sharing, and standing together. In the days that followed, the neighborhood grew stronger. People volunteered to help with repairs. Parents worked together to create safe places for children to play. The community center held classes and events that brought everyone closer. The girl realized that the true magic wasn't just in the new buildings or painted walls. It was in the hearts of the people, in their willingness to care and work together. One sunny afternoon, as she watered the plants outside the center, the man approached her. "You have helped more than you know," he said kindly. She smiled, feeling the warmth of his words. "Kindness," he added, "can change the world, one small step at a time." And in that moment, the girl knew the neighborhood story was far from over. It was only just beginning. The months rolled on, and the neighborhood continued to grow in ways no one could have imagined. The community center was alive every day with laughter, learning, and connection. The small girl who had once simply given a stranger water now found herself a symbol of hope and change. But life wasn't perfect. Challenges still came. There were days when the weather was harsh, when people argued, or when the weight of the past felt heavy. Still, the community held on. One afternoon, the girl sat on the steps of the community center, looking out at the street. A group of children played nearby, their voices rising in excitement. Nearby, neighbors shared stories on benches, their faces bright with smiles. The girl's mother joined her. "You've grown so much," she said gently. The girl looked up. "I've learned a lot," her mother smiled. "What's the most important thing?" The girl thought for a moment. "That kindness doesn't have to be big, just real." Her mother nodded. "Real kindness," she said, "is about showing up, helping, listening, even when it's hard." Just then, a new family moved into a house down the block. They looked tired from travel, carrying boxes and bags. The girl ran over and offered a smile. "Would you like some water?" she asked. The family smiled back, grateful. The girl poured water into a glass and handed it to them. And in that simple act, the circle of kindness continued. The man who had started everything came by that evening. He stopped and watched quietly. "You see," he said, "this is what makes a neighborhood strong. Not buildings or cars or money. It's people and the kindness they share." The girl looked at him, feeling a quiet pride. Together they walked through the neighborhood, past the painted walls, the blooming gardens, and the busy streets. "This is home," he said softly. The girl nodded. "Yes," she said, "and it's ours." The neighborhood had come a long way since the first time the girl offered water to the stranger. It wasn't just about buildings or new paint anymore. It was about the people, their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. One morning, the girl woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today was special. The community center was holding a celebration to mark 1 year since it opened. Invitations had been sent to every house, and people from nearby areas were expected to come. She helped her mother prepare snacks and decorations. Colorful ribbons hung from the trees, balloons bounced gently in the breeze, and the smell of fresh bread and sweet cakes filled the air. Neighbors arrived slowly at first. Old and young, families and singles, newcomers and lifelong residents. They all gathered with smiles and warm greetings. The park and streets buzzed with energy. Children ran around playing games and chasing butterflies. The girl stood near the stage feeling proud but also a little shy. Many eyes looked at her and she knew why. Her small kindness had grown into something much bigger than anyone expected. The man who had returned to the neighborhood years ago stepped onto the stage. He spoke gently but clearly. Today, he said, we celebrate more than a building or a new beginning. We celebrate a community that found its heart again. He paused and looked around. This neighborhood has taught me something important. That kindness is a seed. When you plant it, water it, and care for it, it grows in ways you can't imagine. The girl smiled, remembering the glass of water she gave that day. The man continued. We've built this place together. Not just the center, but the friendships, the hope, and the future. People clapped, some wiping tears from their eyes. After the speech, the celebration went on. There were songs, dances, and stories shared around small fires. The girl's mother helped organize a storytelling circle where neighbors talked about their lives and dreams. As the sun began to set, the girl wandered to a quiet corner. There she found a small garden that had been planted recently. Flowers of every color bloomed there, their petals glowing softly in the fading light. She knelt down, touched a bright yellow flower, and felt the warmth of the day still in its leaves. She thought about how much had changed since that first simple act of kindness. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. The man who had come to the neighborhood smiled and sat beside her. This garden, he said, is like this neighborhood. It needs care and patience, but it's full of life. The girl nodded. Do you know, he added, that one small act can ripple out farther than you ever expect? You started that ripple. She looked up, eyes wide. Sometimes, he said, we think kindness is just about helping one person, but it's really about building a world where everyone can feel safe and loved. The girl smiled quietly. Thank you, she whispered. The man stood and looked at the darkening sky. Keep watering your kindness, he said softly, and watch how far it goes. As the stars appeared overhead, the girl felt hope fill her heart. The neighborhood was more than just a place to live. It was a family, growing, healing, and shining brighter every day. And it all began with a simple glass of water given to a stranger on a hot afternoon. The days after the big celebration were peaceful, but full of new energy. The neighborhood felt alive, like it had finally found a rhythm that made everyone feel at home. The community center was busier than ever. People came not just to learn or play, but to listen, to share, and to grow together. The girl loved watching how the neighborhood changed, but she also noticed something new. There was a quiet strength growing in the people themselves. They weren't waiting for someone else to fix things or bring help. They were starting to help each other. One morning, she saw a group of neighbors gathered around a fallen tree near the park. The tree had been old and finally gave way after a heavy rain. Instead of just cleaning it up, the group talked and laughed as they worked together, turning the fallen branches into benches and a small playground for children. The girl joined them without hesitation. Her hands helped lift, carry, and build. She realized this was kindness too, working with others to create something better. Her mother came over and smiled. You're learning well, she said softly. Kindness isn't always just one small act. Sometimes it's many small acts added up. The girl nodded. It made sense to her. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was full of people trying, helping, and caring. The man who had first come to the neighborhood was there too, working side by side with the others. He talked with neighbors, sharing ideas and listening closely to their thoughts. One afternoon, the girl sat on one of the new benches watching children play nearby. A little boy tripped and fell, scraping his knee. Without thinking, the girl ran over, took out a clean cloth from her bag and gently wiped the boy's knee. "Thank you," he said shyly. She smiled. "You're okay now." That moment reminded her how kindness could be simple and immediate. It wasn't always grand or planned. Sometimes it was just being there when someone needed help. That evening, the neighborhood came together for a special dinner at the community center. Long tables were set up, covered with homemade food and bright candles. Neighbors brought dishes from their cultures, sharing flavors and stories. The girl's mother helped arrange the food while the girl greeted people as they arrived. Everyone talked, laughed, and shared memories. The walls seemed to glow with the warmth of friendship. During the dinner, a quiet woman stood to speak. She was new to the neighborhood, having moved in just a few months earlier. "I was scared to come here," she said softly, "but now I feel like I belong. This community welcomed me when I needed it most." People clapped, and the girl felt a swell of pride. The neighborhood was a place where strangers became friends and where kindness made all the difference. After the meal, music filled the air. People danced, sang, and celebrated the lives they were building together. The girl danced too, spinning and laughing under the soft glow of the lights. As the night grew late, the girl sat with her mother on the steps of the center. They looked up at the stars, feeling the calm of the moment. "Do you think kindness can change the whole world?" the girl asked quietly. Her mother smiled and squeezed her hand. "I think kindness can start with one person, one neighborhood. And if enough people believe in it, yes, it can change everything." The girl nodded, feeling hope like a fire in her chest. She looked around at the faces glowing in the candlelight, at the people who had once been strangers but were now family. The neighborhood had become a place where kindness wasn't just an idea, it was a way of life, and it all began with a simple act, a kind daughter giving water to a stranger on a hot day. The neighborhood was alive with new energy, something the girl had never seen before. It wasn't just the streets or the buildings that had changed. It was the people. They had grown closer, kinder, and more hopeful. It all started with one simple act, when a kind daughter gave a stranger a glass of water on a hot day. That small moment had sparked something bigger than anyone could have imagined. On a bright morning, the girl woke up early, her heart full of excitement. Today was the day the Helping Hands group was meeting again at the community center. This group had become a special place where neighbors came together to talk, plan, and help one another. It was a circle of about 10 people, each bringing something unique. As she got ready, the girl thought about how much had changed since that first meeting. The old empty lot near the park had been transformed into a beautiful garden. The air smelled fresh with flowers and herbs. The garden had become a symbol of hope, a place where neighbors laughed, worked, and dreamed together. She stepped outside into the soft sunlight, hearing children playing and birds singing. Walking through the streets, she saw smiling faces and open doors. The community felt alive and connected in a way it hadn't before. At the community center, the room was already filling with familiar faces. The kind mother, who always baked fresh bread for the group, was arranging chairs. The man who could fix almost anything was checking the tools for their next project. The woman who loved teaching children to read smiled warmly, greeting everyone as they arrived. The gardener, her hands still marked with soil, chatted quietly with the cheerful teacher. The new family who had moved in months ago joined the circle, and the old man who told stories took his usual seat near the window. Each person was ready to share ideas and plans. The girl found a seat next to her mother, listening carefully as the discussion began. They talked about what the neighborhood needed most now. The library project was moving forward, and the group was excited about gathering books and volunteers. But they also dreamed bigger, about more green spaces, places where families could relax and children could play safely. The gardener spoke with passion about expanding the community garden. "Imagine if we grow even more vegetables and flowers," she said. "We can share what we harvest with everyone. It will bring life and color to every street." The man who fixed things nodded in agreement. "And maybe we can build a little tool shed here, so everyone has what they need when they come to help." The cheerful teacher suggested starting classes for adults too, things like sewing, cooking, and basic home repairs. "We all have something to teach and something to learn," she said with a smile. The new family shared stories about the traditions from their old home and how they hoped to bring parts of those traditions into the neighborhood. The old man, who often told stories of the past, spoke softly about how kindness had always been the heart of every strong community. The girl felt a warm glow inside. She remembered the moment she gave water to a stranger and how it had changed so many lives, including her own. Kindness wasn't just a word here. It was a way of living. After the meeting, the neighbors gathered outside and walked together to the garden. The empty lot was no longer empty. It was full of green plants, bright flowers, and small wooden boxes made to grow vegetables. Everyone grabbed tools and started working. The man who fixed things built a small shed to keep their gardening tools safe. The gardener showed everyone how to plant new seeds and take care of the soil. Children helped by watering the plants and clearing weeds. The girl helped her mother spread fresh soil and plant tiny tomato seedlings. The new family brought seeds for herbs they had grown back home: basil, thyme, and mint. They planted them together, laughing as the breeze carried their voices. Neighbors brought snacks and drinks, sharing homemade bread, cheese, and fresh fruit. The garden became more than a place to grow food. It was a place to grow friendships. Days passed and the garden flourished. Bright green leaves stretched toward the sun, colorful flowers blossomed, and the first ripe tomatoes were picked with careful hands. One afternoon, the man who had once been a stranger stopped by to visit. He smiled as he walked through the rows of plants. "This garden is a true gift," he said. "It shows how kindness can turn something forgotten into something beautiful." The girl smiled, feeling proud but humble. "It's not just me," she said. "Everyone helped." He nodded. "That's the secret to a strong community." Life in the neighborhood moved forward with hope. The library grew with donated books and eager readers. The teachers' classes brought new skills and confidence to many adults. People shared meals, helped fix each other's homes, and took care of one another in ways both big and small. One evening, the girl sat quietly in the garden with her mother. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks. The garden smelled of fresh earth and blooming flowers. "Look at how far you've all come," her mother said softly. The girl smiled, feeling the peace of the moment. "It all started with one small act," she said. Her mother nodded. "Kindness grows like a seed. With care, it becomes strong and beautiful." The girl thought about the stranger she helped and the many neighbors who had joined hands since. The neighborhood was no longer just a place to live. It was a home filled with kindness, hope, and dreams. As the stars appeared, the girl looked around and felt a deep sense of belonging. The story was still unfolding, with new chapters yet to be written, and it all began with a simple act of kindness, given on a hot day by a kind daughter.